This is a demo video on how to use a free and open source photo editing software called GIMP, G-I-M-P. And here is the website where you can download it, gimp.org. It's quite simple. You just download it, install it, nothing to pay, nothing to register for. And once you get it started, once you get it installed, then you can start editing with it. So here are a few set of photos that I'm going to work with today to show you various different things that we can do in GIMP. GIMP is quite a powerful piece of software, and it's great that it is free and open source. Very, very similar to Adobe Photoshop. As photojournalists or as documentary photographers, I will show you just really some basic post-processing or editing steps that you should be doing. We don't need the full power of GIMP. You don't need the full power of Photoshop. We just basically need to do some simple things to bring the picture back to hopefully what it looked like as you were documenting it on the scene. All right, so those are the photos. Let's go ahead and open up GIMP. So like I said, once you have it installed, you can just pop it open. Here it is right here. So I have it already ready and going. My recommendations for you, typically when GIMP first starts up, it may be a very, very small screen, may not be full screen, it may have just been closed down a little bit. So you can push this green button up on the top, and that will extend your window open or make it full frame or full screen, which is always really, really good, because then you can definitely see the photos much better that you are working on. Okay. So we'll keep it full frame, full screen, and let me try to explain some of these various panels that we have within our software now. All right, so let's start in the top left panel up here. These are the tools, various tools that you can use. And if you just hover over it, you can see it gives a little pop-up menu, because sometimes even within these various tools there are sub-tools. The move tool, this is a cropping tool. In here there's a variety of tools that we're going to do. So if you want to change them, you basically just, there's a tiny little kind of arrow in the lower right hand corner. You just click that and hold it, move your mouse over, and then move the mouse up and down, and you can select different types of tools within this set. So we're primarily going to be probably using the rotate tool. We might use some of the other ones, but I think we're just going to work with the rotate one. Just below that, the panel below the tools panel, you have what are called tool options. So as you click on these various tools, you'll see that this panel down here will change, and that gives you more choices on what you'd like to do with those various tools. Okay. The top narrow strip, which we don't see right now, we'll have that in just a moment. That will be the list of all the photos that we are currently working on. I'll open up those 5 photos, and then you'll see them kind of pop up here as a narrow strip, and you'll see little thumbnail images. The main window in the middle, that of course is our window that we're going to work with, the current photo that we're working with, the one that we're editing, and then of course we can jump between the various photos and work on them. They'll always pop up here. On the top right panel, we have some of the brushes, patterns, fonts, a list of recent documents, those types of things. So when you're working with some of these tools, you might want to use some of these various options over here. We're not really going to worry about that right now, because there's not too many things that we need to work with. If we go a little bit further down, we have more panels down here. We have layers and channels and paths. It's very similar, of course, again, to Photoshop, but we're really not going to be using any of these things down here. One other panel that we might be using, so you've got 4 choices of panels here on the lower left. That is, of course, our tool options. And this in right here, this is our history. So you may see as you're editing your photos that each step you make will be listed here, the history of all the editing changes that you're making. It's not really so important. I mean, you might want to from time to time, if you want to back up, if you don't like some kind of edits you did, you can kind of back up in your history. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our 5 photos. So we can go to File, Open, Of course, you could look on the desktop, and then here I've got sample photos, and here are the 5 photos. So I'm just going to shift-click, grab all 5 of them, and hit open. All right, so as I mentioned, if you look up here, you've got the 5 photos, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the 5 that we're going to work on today. My recommendation and suggestion to you is when you are working on your photos is to just work on them one at a time rather than try to do various things with the different photos. Just work on them one at a time and then save them individually. All right, so in this editing process, I'm just going to give you, like I said, not too many steps. There's not too many things that we need to be doing for your photos that are photojournalism photos. But there may be a few things that you may want to correct. That could be from cropping, straightening horizon lines, making sure that your white balance is correct. That means your color is correct, changing your photos to black and white, and those types of things. Okay, so 2 things that we should do to start off with, and before you start doing any more editing, is to crop the photo or get the horizon line correct. So let me just go to this picture right here. This is picture number 3. As you can see, this is a crooked horizon line. So the horizon line is where the sky meets Earth, or our planet. It could be by the sea, it could be mountains, it could be fields, or whatever. And you can see this picture is taken a little bit crooked. So we actually would like to have this, if you would like to, you can have this straightened out, this horizon line. That means we need to rotate the picture a little bit. But how do we make sure that we get this horizon line kind of correct in the middle? So first of all, let's pick the tool that we're going to need up here in the upper left to straighten out this horizon line. And that would be this one right here. That's called the rotate tool. So if you were to click on that, of course there's various ones you can choose from. We're just going to choose the rotate tool, which is right here. Okay, now I can of course just get right in, click my mouse button, and start rotating the picture if I wanted to. All right, but I'm not quite sure how my horizon line is correct. So let's not do that. Let's do a few more things to make sure that we're getting something that helps us identify a correct horizon line. So first of all, go over here to the clipping part and click to crop to result. All right, so once we turn the image, it'll kind of crop it for us. So it'll cut off the corners that are kind of at the weird angle. So we'll hit the crop to result. Next thing is, as you can see around your picture, there's a ruler here on the left side and on the top side, and that is a ruler in pixels. You can of course change your rulers to centimeters and inches and picas and whatever else, but we'll leave it at pixels. It's not really that important for us right now. Let's go to the top ruler because we want to get a straight horizon line. Let's say you have a bunch of buildings and the buildings are crooked and you want to get a straight vertical line. You can also do what I'm going to do from this side. But I'm worried about my horizon line being straight. So I'm just going to go up here to my top ruler, somewhere around here, and just click, hold the mouse button down, and start dragging down, and I've got this absolutely horizontal line. And I want to drop it somewhere around here. Now you can really see that my horizon line is definitely not straight. There's definitely something crooked going on. So I'm going to use this kind of light bluish line as my marker, or as a way for me to gauge when I am rotating my picture enough to get it straight. Okay, I've got my rotate tool. I can now go to one of the corners, click, and I can turn and rotate my picture until I get my horizon line somewhat straight. So maybe something like that. That looks pretty straight right there. I let go of the mouse. Okay, and now we've got, as you can see, we've now got the rotated picture. Or we've got the horizon line rather straight again. If you want to, grab the move tool. We can take this line and just move it out of the way again. Okay. Straight horizon line we now have, or somewhat straight, straighter than before for sure. Next thing to do is now we need to crop the image. And as you can see, after I've rotated it, now it's got some kind of what's called like invisible part of the picture or the image, which we don't need. So I'm going to take my crop tool, which is this one right here, click on that. A few settings you may want to check over here just to make sure that it's all working correctly. Keep this little button right here toggled on, fixed at aspect ratio, okay? Because otherwise, if this is unfixed, and you'll see when I click and I do a crop, I'm going to click in here, I can make the picture any size that I want. I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to keep the ratio of my picture the same. So let's escape out of that. So I'm going to keep it the same. That means, since you can see that this is a horizontal or a landscape picture, which is in a 3:2 ratio basically. That means for every 2 this way, it's 3 that way. That's just how that kind of camera works. Different cameras have different types of ratios. Some might be a 1:1, for example, a medium format Hasselblad camera, or if you're shooting with Instagram or something like that. Most mobile phones shoot at a 3:4 ratio. That's almost square. Most DSLR cameras would shoot at a 2:3 ratio. Some video cameras shoot at a 16:9. So there are actually a lot of different ratios that you can choose from down here. But we're just going to keep it at a fixed ratio. Nothing else for us to really worry about. So now when I click and I drag in here, you can see that if I move my mouse in all different directions, it still keeps it at the, I guess this would be roughly a 3:2 ratio. So let me decide how I want to crop it. Let's say I want to make it a little bit smaller. I can move this frame around a little bit. It's nice that it has these vertical and horizontal lines, just to make sure that we can kind of see where different elements are in our picture. We can of course change that if we want to. So that's rule of fifths. I can change it to rule of thirds. If you remember, rule of thirds might help you decide if you want to put a certain subject on the left side or right side of the frame, or if you want to keep your horizon line on the lower part or upper part, right? So you can use the rule of thirds. All right, so I've got it roughly something like this. Oops, let's try that again. I've got it roughly something like this. I'm happy with that crop. All I need to do is hit my return key or double click in the window. Okay, and now we've got the new picture without the part on the outside that we no longer need. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Let's go to another picture up here and just do a quick crop. Let's say, for example, I've got these people down here in the lower part of the picture, and there's some people over here. Maybe I don't want them in my picture. Maybe I just want to still keep my fixed aspect ratio, but I want to take the people out, so I maybe might want to crop it something a little bit more like this. All right, so we can still see the important parts of this back part of this old, the carved part of an old ship. Again, once we've finished our cropping, double click, and now it crops our photo for us, and we've got the people on these two sides removed from the frame that are not important to us anymore. Let's look at this one. Maybe we want to crop this one as well. Maybe we don't want him so much in there, or maybe we don't want this white sky so much, but we just want to focus more on him. So again, we can click and drag. We still want to see his newspaper. I'm going to take a little bit of the sky out of the top because it's so bright. And maybe let's just focus it down a little bit. Okay. All right, so we've got a picture that's more like that. If you don't like that, if you want to go back, of course, like I said, you can go to your history, and you can just go back a step, and it takes you back to where you were in the beginning. Okay, so we've done the horizon, we've corrected our horizon line, we've cropped the photo. Let's say you want to need to rotate a photo. This one was shot in a vertical format, but then when it came out of the camera, maybe out of the mobile phone, it shows it as a horizontal. Well, that's not what we want. So we need to actually rotate this image. So again, we can go to this right here, rotate. If you want to, you can completely rotate the image. There's probably easier ways to do this. Let me get rid of that. Image, transform, rotate 90 degrees clockwise. Okay, and that takes it care of for us real quick. Now you can see that the image has gotten bigger than the actual frame, so we can't really see it so well. So you can use different types of keys to make this fit a little bit more within the frame. So if you use the minus key, it goes small. If you use the if you use the Shift plus key, it makes your picture bigger. So again, the minus key on the keyboard will decrease the size of your picture, and the Shift plus key will increase the size. Now it's not actually changing the real pixel size. All it's doing is it's making it so that we can see it in here better. And you can see that down here by the percentage. So it's basically, right now, the picture we see is actually only 18.2% of the actual real size. So if we were to go 100%, you'll see what it looks like. It's way too big. Okay, so we don't want to go 100%. Let's go down to about 18.2% again. All right. So, easy part first. Next part. Let's say you want to actually convert all of your color photos into black and white. So if you want your photo story to be black and white, it's totally acceptable for photojournalism and documentary photos. What you should do is you should only do it all black and white or only all color. You shouldn't have part of your picture colorized and the rest black and white, or part of your picture black and white and the rest color. You either do it all black and white or all color. That's a pretty easy step to do. You just go to Image, Mode, Grayscale. Right, and it converts it immediately to black and white for you. Convert it. There we go. So now we've changed it from color to black and white. And of course, if we go back here in our history, we can go back again and look at it in color. We can go forward and look at it in black and white. All right, so it's completely up to you. If you prefer your pictures to be in black and white or color, there's no problem at all. What I do recommend is, if you're going to do that, all of your photos in your story or in your series should be black and white, or all of your photos in your series should be color. Don't mix and match between the two. A few other adjustments we can do. For example, if you want to, if you find a photo such as this one right here, where the white balance was not correct when the camera took the picture. So this is a picture that was taken inside of the ice hotel. It's indoor. This is all ice everywhere, and there's some light blue light that's in the hotel. It's actually white light, but with the light, with all the ice everywhere, it turns kind of blue. But it's made the picture way too blue, so it's kind of inaccurate in the true representation of what the colors are. Even this ice down here is now very, very blue. This needs to be a little bit more white. The orange juice is too blue and needs to be a little bit more orange in color. So we need to correct the white balance on here. And the easiest and quickest way to do that is just to use an auto setting. And hopefully the auto settings should usually give you a pretty good color correction for white balance. So to do that, you go up to Colors, Auto, White Balance, and you'll see what's going to happen. All right, it's converted it. It's actually made this ice really the white that it should be. Made the orange juice the true color of orange that it should be. And it also made the color that's around here on this person more accurate. Because if we go back again, you can see everything is really way too blue and maybe even a little bit too dark. So this might be a better color correction for this photo. We can even look at this one, so let's do color correction on this one, because this is also a little bit green, I would say, even up here in the clouds and the sky. It's a light green tint. This ground, this dirt, should be maybe a little bit more red in color, not so green. And then for sure the snow is green. You can see the snow and ice, so we need to change that as well. So let's go to, again, same as before, we're just going to adjust the colors, Auto, White Balance. We'll see what it comes up with. Now, I think in this case, it's really gone too far. It's toned the photo too much. It really created everything way too blue up here. Everything is super, super saturated down here on the bottom. So I don't know if that is a very good representation or color correction. But let's just leave it for now. Maybe we can do some changes and corrections on that later on. A few other adjustments that you can do to your photos. You can go into some of the various functions up here. That includes colors and levels. And let me just kind of explain what this pop-up window here has. So this right here is called a histogram. And this is a pixel representation from the absolute blacks to the absolute whites of the various tones within this photo. As you can see, there's really, if you look at this picture, there's almost no places where there's absolute black. Maybe a little bit up here, maybe a little bit up here. There's also, and that means you can't see much bumps up here, or a big lump of white over here. Here you can see a little bit of a white, so yeah, maybe there's some whites in here somewhere. So there are a few places where there are some absolute whites. Everything in the middle basically is the tonal range. So if this picture, in your opinion, would, let's say, be too light, we can take the darks and we can move them in a little bit and darken this picture a little bit, as you can see what's happening. Or if it's too dark, you can pick here and you can lighten it up a little bit. Or you can even take the midtones. So you leave the lights and darks alone, and you change the midtones to a darker or brighter version. Of course, you can preview the entire time. You can turn it off and turn it on to see the changes that you've made. There is also an auto function, so you can just hit this right here if you want to see what it comes up with. Sometimes the auto does something good. In this case, turned it really blue, and I'm not sure if I want that blue change on the picture. Of course, we could also try to just see what happens when we do the colors auto white balance. Yeah, it also turned it quite blue. I'm not really too happy with that. Okay, so let's go back to that. Let's see a few other things that we can do to change our picture. So as I mentioned before, we have some other tools to work with. Colors, levels, which I mentioned, which was right here. You know, you can even use that on black and white photos, colors, levels. You can see there's really no light, so maybe we can lighten this picture up some. Maybe we can darken the midtones a little bit. Maybe we can lighten the midtones a little bit. You know, just be careful about how much you change on these settings, that you're not really altering the true image as you had seen it at the time. All right, let's see what else we have. Colors, brightness and contrast. As you suspect that means, we can make it brighter, you can make it darker. You can make the contrast less, that means it flattens it out or makes it a little bit more foggy. You can contrast it more, that makes it very extremes, makes the brights really bright and the darks really dark. We also have saturation. We'll work more on a color photo for saturation, so let's go to this. Colors, saturation. What that does is it really takes the colors and it can really bump up to be very bright, or it can take the colors very muted. Okay, so you can really saturate your colors, make them very vibrant and rich. We also have exposure. That's almost as similar as a darkening or lightening a picture. Right, it's really taking your blacks, making your blacks much darker, leaving the whites alone, but it's turning your blacks around. Less or more exposure. Basically, that's something as if you're deciding that you need more light in the picture, you need more darkness in the picture. Also, something to work with is called shadows and highlights. All right. So in this case, we have this person who's really kind of a lot in the shadows. We've got a lot of highlights here. Let's say our highlights are too light and our shadows are too dark. Let's go to shadows and highlights. So this allows us to basically get some more information out of the shadows. As you can see, if I crank it up, it only deals with the darker parts of the photo. And of course, we can make the highlights darker or brighter if we wanted to as well. So that's kind of good when you're working with pictures in very large ranges of light. So if there's a dark spot in the photo, or if there's a light spot in the photo that needs to be adjusted and fixed in some way. Okay, so let's have a look here at a few other things that we could work with. Let's say, for example, that I did decide that this was way too vibrant and way too rich. We can do a few changes on here. Let's desaturate it a little bit. Let's take this saturation down some. Let's change the color balance just a little bit. So it's too much blue in here. That means I'd like to take some of that blue out. Here you've got cyan, magenta, and yellow. So that means you can add or subtract these various types of colors. As you know what magenta is, what cyan is, and what yellow is. Okay, so you can do some adjustments there as well. Let's say you wanted to take a picture like this, and you wanted to change it from a vertical to a horizontal picture. So I'm going to crop it in a certain way. So let me go to my crop tool. I go to my subtools. Now, here I've got two choices. So if I were to crop it now, I'm going to keep my aspect ratio fixed. Now if I were to crop it now, it's always going to give me a vertical, as you can see, but I don't want that. I still want to keep the ratio the same, but I want to change this to a horizontal, a landscape. So I can click this, and now when I click and drag, it only gives me this type of frame to work with. All right, so maybe I could, if I wanted to, I could crop that picture into something like that instead of what I had before. All right. One other editing tool that I want to show you. If you're dealing with a picture like this, let's do a few corrections to this first. I'll just, it's a bit too bright for me, so I'm going to use some levels to darken this down just a little bit. Okay, so I think that looks a little bit better. Let's look at the history again. If we go from the previous to this one, yeah, I like that. That's a little bit more clear on this guy's face. In fact, I'm going to crop this down just a little bit more. I think it's too wide for me. Let's make sure that we are on the horizontal. I don't need so much of this guy's face. Let's take it more like this. I still want a lot of the newspaper. I need less of his face, and I want to get a little bit more of this sky out of the way, this pretty bright sky, because it's really taking a lot of the attention away of him. Okay, so here's our crop now that I have for this guy. There's kind of one thing that's missing, or that's still kind of a bit of a problem here. You'll notice these dark spots here in the sky in the background. Now, that's not something that was in the picture while I was taking it. That's actually some dust that I had on the lens of my, on the front of my lens. So I need to remove these dust spots. And this is the only time when you should be using the clone tool to remove something. All right, as I mentioned before, you should never be adding anything or subtracting anything from a photo. But in this case, it is acceptable if your lens has some dust on it, or if your sensor has some dust on it, that you can go in and remove these two elements, or in this case, these two dust spots. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose the clone tool. And then when you choose the clone tool, you can choose different kinds of brushes. For example, the brushes over here. I would suggest this one or this one. That has a little bit of, it fades around the outside. I wouldn't use anything this hard. Use something that kind of has a fade out effect. Now I'm going to take my mouse and go over to the area of, I want to remove this dust spot. And to remove this dust spot, basically I'm going to copy a piece of the sky here, and I'm just going to paste it over that part. All right. Take some from here and paste it over that. Now this circle doesn't quite cover this full dust spot circle, so I want to make my circle right here larger, slightly larger than this dust spot. So I can increase the size of my circle just by a little bit. Yeah, we're getting there. Then I want to paste a piece of this guy on top of this dust spot. All right, so to do that, I'm going to hold down the Command key on my Mac keyboard, hold it down, click the sky that I want to copy, take my finger off the Command key, go over what I want to cover, and just click a few times. Okay, as you can see, I've now covered up this dust spot. Show you again. I want to cover up this dust spot. Now this circle is a little bit smaller than this dust spot, so let's increase the size of my circle again. A little bit more perhaps. Okay, so that's going to cover it up. I'm going to take a piece of sky, let's say around here, Command, click, finger off the Command key, and just paste it over this dust spot. Okay, so that's how you can remove pieces of dust from the image. That's acceptable. Again, don't do something else as crazy as, let's say, you don't like his eyebrows, so therefore I'm going to remove his eyebrows. All right, you're not going to go in and do something as silly as this right here. Let's get a size of the circle a little bit bigger. Command, click, and his eyebrow can be removed. All right, you're not going to do anything as silly as that. Let's go back to our history and remove the eyebrow removal. Okay. So we've done the work that we want to do in the pictures, changed it to black and white. We've done white balance correction. We've gotten some more information out of the shadows. We've darkened the highlights a little bit. We've straightened our horizon line. We've fixed the color and the saturation. We've changed it from a vertical photo to horizontal. We've done some additional cropping, and we've removed our dust spots. The last part that we can do, if you'd like to, before you save it, you can sharpen the picture a little bit. And let me show you why we want to do something like that. I'm going to zoom into his eyes here. And I'm going to sharpen this part of his eyes. So that basically means we're going to look at the entire picture. And you can see it's a little bit soft. It's a little bit kind of blurry or out of focus. And we can just maybe just enhance that just a little bit to sharpen it up. To do that, go to Filters, Enhance, Sharpen Unsharp Mask. Select that. Now we've got some tools to work with here: radius, amount, and threshold. Of course, if you change these figures, these numbers, you're going to definitely see a lot of changes happening. You can already see it happening to his eye right here. Don't do it too much, because then you've got the changes that are way too strong. I just pull these numbers down just a little bit. Again, you can look at it before and after. Maybe increase the radius a little bit, take the threshold down a little bit. All right, so we've sharpened up the picture just slightly, so it makes his eyes, for sure his eyes, that's the main part of the picture. It brings a little bit more sharpness. It makes them less blurry. Okay, once that's done, hit OK. Let's look at it in regular size again. Now we can finally, if we want to, we can save the image or export it. We go to File, Export As, select where you want to send it. I want to put it on my desktop. I want to give it a name. Call it Happy Valley Better. Then I click Export here. Before it's all done, it's going to ask me a few more things. I'm going to export, of course, as a JPEG. That was my choice. I can save some additional data if I want here, and I'll explain out what this data is here in a moment. If you don't want to, we can just turn all those off. Your quality doesn't need to be at 98. It can be much smaller. Let's put it at 80% because we can compress the size of this just a little bit. And then you just go down to the export part. There we go. Let's now save this photo. Here it is right here. Double click on it. Just have a preview. And that's the photo that we just saved. All right, one more thing that you may want to do is you may want to add what's called metadata to the pictures. That's information that shows that this picture belonged to you. So to add or change the metadata, I'll show you what the metadata is. Image, metadata, edit metadata. So each photo has data attached to it that is already there without us being able to change it. Okay? Now there is some data that we can change, of course, on our own, and that's this description, IPTC, and those types of things. So if you want to, you can put your name, you're the photographer. You can write a caption about this photo if you want. You can write some keywords in here if you want. You can write where you took the picture, your address, your phone number, all these types of things that basically will be stuck to that picture always, so that if somebody tries to use that picture later on, you can always show them, hey, look, that photo is actually mine. Okay, so we're going to write the metadata to that picture. Let's go ahead and save it again. Save as. Oops. File, export as. We'll leave it as a JPEG. Let's put it back on the desktop again. Let's just say it's new. Export it, and this time I'm going to have it save that special data that went with it. Leave it at 80% again. Hit export. I've got this new one. If I hit Info, we can look at some of that metadata, which is right here. Right? There's some information that's already attached to that. And if you look with another special kind of software, you can see the information that we added. That says that it's my photo, even my caption or whatever else that I added to it. Okay, so that's pretty much all that you really need to be doing when it comes to editing photos for photojournalism or documentary photography. Nothing more than that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. This software is quite easy to use. As I said before, it is free, open source. So if you're unable to use the Photoshop software, you can definitely use this GIMP software. And that's it. Have fun editing.